friends. I'm not a life coach. I am not a therapist. I'm a mom. My name is Ina Irby. I recently disassociated myself from being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's been officially 118 days. Crazy. I was the epitome of a crazy Jehovah's Witness. I was that person. Now, there are different phases that come through all this, right? There's the freedom phase where you realize you're free, right? And then there's some really sad phases that you go through. And I think I really went through that yesterday. It was a phase of, oh my gosh, I told the truth. And I had done that to other individuals singly in the organization. I didn't really talk about my brother's molest in the organization to too many people. One, because I found that they didn't really believe it. And they felt like the society, the corporation was doing enough, that they were putting light on this subject and they were now doing things differently. And so I found that whatever I said fell on deaf ears. And it was generally always, it's your problem in the way you're looking at it. So it's very, it's really hard. It's really hard. And mind you, I was the crazy Jehovah's Witness that would defend, I would defend Jehovah's Witnesses. And yeah, I think a lot of things I defended. And after a while, there are so many things if you're really honest with yourself, that you can't defend anymore because it just is a mess. And I've explained that. I've felt anxiety when I go out in field service, and it was because I knew that people around me probably knew more than I did, or knew exactly what I did, and they were going to call me out on it one day, and I was going to have to be honest and say, yeah, you're right. The corporation is evil, and they are doing everything they can to hide what they have been doing to children. Now, mind you, disfellowshipping also affected my family because my father committed suicide. And it was because he didn't want to get disfellowshipped again. That's really hard for people. I feel like I'm in a good place mentally, but I still feel very sad, deeply sad, because 20 years of my life, 31 years I was baptized. You're young, you don't understand what you're doing. I got baptized at 17 and a half. And then all this time I've spent, in 20 years that I could have been, of my life with my husband, I could have been focusing on different goals. Together, being together, not seeing him as my enemy. He's my enemy. He didn't love Jehovah. Right? He didn't love Jehovah, and he did not think the way Jehovah's Witnesses thought, and he left early on. We were married for 6 years. He left on that 6-year period, and for 26 years we've been married. There's a little guilt there for not listening to him, for feeling that he was the enemy. So it's hard to swallow. It's a hard pill to swallow when you finally realize that you were so pig-headed. You didn't listen. And you didn't listen to somebody who was trying to tell you the truth. Yeah, Crisis of Conscience, that book sat on our bedroom, in our bedroom, on a desk for over 20 years. And I never picked it up. Had I picked it up, my whole life might have been different. I want to believe that it would have been different. So it's a hard pill to swallow. You're going to have bad days. And I had one last night. It was tough. That you have changed your whole life to believe a certain way. And I never believed that only Jehovah's Witnesses will be saved. I never, ever have ever believed that. In all my baptized life, even though it was preached from the pulpits, I never believed that. So suicide has hit our family, and I just want to make you aware of it. Because it's in my family, it is something that I have to consider as being something very important to that it could happen. The risks of suicide once they're in the family, it's the children, whoever is left behind, they have a higher risk of suicide. So yeah, it's always there. It's always kind of scary. I especially when things hit that I'm not anticipating in life. This life, the other life I was looking forward to, which I still feel is very much real. It's just the bumps along the way, especially when something like this hits. The reality of what you don't have anyone to go to. Your group of people will be gone. These people that, love you. No way. They're not there. So you have to reach out to other people. For me, it's my husband and being very honest, which is very painful. And if you don't have that, you have to find that. You have to find a counselor at school. You have to find someone to be able to talk honestly with. And that can be very painful. Along the process is very painful. And suicide is a very real subject for Jehovah's Witnesses who leave. Either because they have been disfellowshipped, they don't want to get disfellowshipped, they don't want to leave their families, they've left the organization and now they're alone. Yeah, it's a very real thought. And I don't think there are any statistics out there that Jehovah's Witnesses actually shell out that tell you who has been committing suicide. So, yeah, statistics are not actually, they're not open with the statistics. The corporation is not open with the statistics about child molest. They're not going to be open about statistics about suicide. Yeah, no, they're not. But it's unfortunate that they don't do that. And I looked up American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and it says the risk factors and warning signs, right? It says there's no single cause for suicide. Suicide most often occurs when stressors and health issues converge to create an experience of hopelessness and despair. Depression is the most common condition associated with suicide and is often undiagnosed or untreated. Conditions like depression, anxiety, and substance problems, especially when unaddressed, increase risk for suicide. Yet, it's important to note that most people who actively manage their mental health and conditions go on to engage in life. Something to look out for: suicide warnings. Something to look out for when concerned that a person may be suicidal is a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors. This is the sharpest concern if the new or changed behavior is related to a painful event, loss, or change. Most people who take their lives exhibit one or more warning signs, either through what they say or what they do. If a person talks about killing themselves, feeling hopeless, having no reason to live, being a burden to others, feeling trapped, or unbearable pain. And behaviors that may signal risk, especially if related to painful event, loss, or change: increased use of alcohol or drugs, looking for a way to end their lives, such as searching online for methods, withdrawing from activities, isolating from family and friends, sleeping too much or too little, visiting or calling people to say goodbye, give away prized possessions, aggression, and fatigue. Now, you may want to go ahead and look this up. It's afsp.org. And this is under risk factors and warnings signs. And, you know, unfortunately, as Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're honest, or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And if you've left the organization, you are alone. And that feeling of loneliness is it isolates you. And it's so strange, especially if you actually you've done the right thing. You've stood up for what's right, and you know that. And to me, it makes sense that there would be suicide in the organization. One, because this would drive you crazy. Let's say you remain in there, you get disfellowshipped, and you know it's wrong, and everyone around you is telling you you're wrong. You try and reason it out. Elders, you go to these men and you try and reason with them, as I know I did, and there's no reasoning with this group of people. And so there has to be a healthy disconnect in your mind and heart. And I think that is what is the hardest thing to do, especially if you don't know any differently, and you have to look outside of your sphere of people and that you normally would go to. And at the same time, you know, you don't have these people anymore in your life to help you out. You know, let's say you get sick and you need a meal prepared for you. You need support. I think of all the families that have have gone through the judicial system, and they've had to deal with lawyers from the corporation, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society Corporation. These lawyers are rough. They are not kind brothers. They are lawyers, and they treat you like such. And so these poor families that have already gone through abusive, their children being molested, they're going through a whole nother abuse by the congregation and by, quote, brothers. Help those families get help properly. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. That's not going to happen. Didn't happen with our family. And they knew this whole time. And the other little boys and their families that had this very same thing happen to them. And I know the only reason why we ever found out that my brother had gotten molested by this child molester is because a young 18-year-old boy was trying to commit suicide. And that's how the congregation elders in that congregation found that out. So, yeah. Risk factors. It's really scary because as I spoke to some other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and they all were in the back of a Uber, and they were all talking about how once they realized what was going on, what they were in, they all felt they wanted to die. And I think in this process, we all feel like that at one point. Like, okay, why is this? Let's just go to sleep and not wake up. And each of them had explained, well, I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way. And the Uber driver was like, okay, that's kind of crazy. And one of the ex-brothers said, no, we're okay now. We're all okay now. But yeah, it happens. You get up. You know, like last night was tough. I'm like, I saw my husband as an enemy for over 20 years, and you look at your life and you think you could have made so many different choices, and yet you were so pinned in by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Corporation, the society, the corporation, and their linear thinking. And it's very damaging to your mind and to your heart. So it throws you it throws you for your faith as well. It throws your faith. And you have to get back up and try and dust yourself off and recognize that it's not, the crimes were not made by God, but the crimes were made by man. And I really enjoy this man, My Bondage and My Freedom, Frederick Douglass. Now he does explain that some slaves didn't want to leave their slave position, and because they were afraid to live. And I think that does happen as Jehovah's Witnesses. It's scary to live, and it's scary when you see bills piling up and you get sick or you're getting old. The people in your life aren't talking to you that you loved, that you cared about. I did not have any problems with my not talking to my immediate family, because one, they all have very dangerous viewpoints, and they have issues that they're not going to be resolved here on this. To me, they've had plenty of time to resolve certain issues, and so it's a lot of control, and I want healthy boundaries, and I can just disconnect. I can love and honor them from a distance. And that's what I do for certain family members. And so these family members hadn't talked to me way before I did what I did. So I'm fine with that. And I find that there's the measure of mental health that I get from keeping them away and keeping them at bay is way more peaceful, because as soon as they come back into my life, chaos happens again, and I don't want chaos anymore. I want to minimize chaos. Mr. Douglas on page 166 and 167. In 167 it says, I loved all mankind, slaveholders not accepted, though I abhorred slavery more than ever. And I do abhor religious slavery more than ever before, than I have ever now in my life. I see religion as a slaveholder. He goes into explaining he met a devout man, and this man, his name was Mr. Lawson, and this man not only prayed 3 times a day, but he prayed as he walked through the streets, at his work, on his dray, everywhere. His life was a life of prayer, and his words, when he spoke to his friends, were about a better world. And I like that it says, the old man could read a little, and I was a great help to him in making out hard words, for I was a better reader than he. I could teach him the letter, but he could teach me the spirit. And high, refreshing times we had together in singing, praying, and glorifying God. So his name was Uncle Lawson. And I find that these words are so encouraging through darkness and misery and doubts and fears. Because we all have that when we leave the organization. We have darkness, we have misery, we have doubts and fears. And that is hard to explain when you're to someone until you go through it. I like how he said, casting all one's care upon God, and by having faith in Jesus Christ as the Redeemer, friend, and Savior of those who diligently seek him. So he still found great comfort in being reconciled to God through Christ. Even though he saw horrible things done to people. And think as faithful individuals, it's very that leave the organization, we only see God as a friend, not as our Father and our protector. And we have that opportunity to see that as our God, as our Heavenly Father and a protector. And even though it seems like he's not doing a very good job right now, because that's exactly how it feels, right? It feels like he's not doing a very good job. If I always look to this man, if he still believed, he believed in something much bigger than ourselves, Mr. Frederick Douglass, and that the world would get to be a better place. And Mr. Lawson felt the same way. Yeah, it's 118 days. It's a little tough. It's not gonna, I know that there's a period of abyss, that it feels like a bit of abyss. Be careful with yourself, and just to know that this is part of it. It's part of there is a freedom that you know a lot more, and you can know a lot more, but there's a deep sense of loss and sadness because of how you're treated. And to be gentle with yourself during that process. I'm learning that too. I mean, this really hit hard. And I did this deliberately. I knew what I was doing, and I knew that there was going to be pain involved. I knew it. I saw my dad go through it for 15 years. I knew it. But it's still something, even though I knew all these things these feelings were going to come up, it's still hard to brace yourself for it, because it comes in waves, and it comes when you least expect it. And then it can be very debilitating. These are some of the health factors, right, that will bring on suicide. Mental health conditions, depression, right? Substance use problems, bipolar, schizophrenia, personality traits of aggression, mood changes and poor relationships, conduct disorder, anxiety disorders, serious physical health conditions, including pain, traumatic brain injury. Interesting, right? And I have a bit of all of that. All of that. Environmental factors, access to lethal means, including firearms and drugs, prolonged stress. I mean, who doesn't have prolonged stress? We live in this world. Such as harassment, bullying, relationship problems, or unemployment. Okay, harassment and bullying. You're going to get that from the actual elders from the congregation. You're going to get that. You're going to get it. It doesn't matter, even if you try and do it in a dignified fashion. Try and not talk to people about your ideas, right? Don't share it with the congregation. You try and do it in a dignified fashion. I tried to do that so that I didn't influence anybody in any way, and quietly just get my little letters together, hand it over to my elder body, and get the hell out of there, right? I didn't want to have anything. I just want to cut. And you still get bullying. Yeah, so, and then history. You got a history. If you have a history, previous suicide attempts, family history of suicide, there's a lot of people. I would be highly interested in knowing exactly what the suicide rates are in the organization. They're very quiet about that. They're very, very quiet about it. If you look too on behavior, it says behavior related to suicide, related to painful event, loss, or change, right? Isolating from family and friends. Well, as a witness, I mean, if you have any disagreements at all, right away your friends and your family will isolate you. So I would be highly interested in knowing what the suicide rates are in the organization, because of the abuse that happens within the organization to cause something like this. It's very sad. It's very, very sad. So Yeah, just hang in there. Don't give up. All right. Well, I hope this helps you on your healing journey. It is a journey. And don't give up. It can be really bad day for a couple of bad days, but it'll get better. This too shall pass, as my grandmother would say. This too shall pass. I hope this helps you on your healing journey, my friends. Follow your bliss and be good humans.